A multi-million-dollar supercar is born and engineered to break 300 kilometers per hour on a flawless track. But in the ultra-modern landscape of Dubai, its deadliest enemy might not be the racetrack at all. It is not a devastating crash. It is not the sheer violence of excessive speed. It is the exact moment the machine stands completely still under the open sky. Look closely at the empty avenues, the sprawling, silent marinas, the heat haze distorting the towering silhouette of the Burj Khalifa. When the heat index violently hits 143 degrees Fahrenheit, the fundamental question is no longer whether this wealthy metropolis has enough financial capital to buy these mechanical masterpieces. The more terrifying question is whether this city still possesses a climate that actually allows them to be used as outdoor symbols of extreme wealth. If a million-dollar vehicle is only truly safe when it is hidden securely inside a heavily air-conditioned garage, is it still a symbol of ultimate freedom, or has it devolved into a fragile, high-maintenance asset that demands constant artificial preservation? Dubai is a modern economic miracle, an entire metropolitan identity constructed on the visual projection of unparalleled luxury. Towering skyscrapers pierce the clouds, opulent, impossibly grand hotels line the coast. Wide, flawless avenues stretch infinitely into the horizon. Within this carefully curated image, the supercar serves as the absolute perfect visual representation of the city itself. Fast, exponentially expensive, incredibly rare, unapologetically ostentatious. It is the ultimate global thumbnail for a city that refuses to accept boundaries. But this perfect, glittering symbol possesses a deeply mundane and grounded weakness. At its core, it is still just a physical machine, a machine that must endure radiant atmospheric heat, blistering asphalt, and relentless solar radiation day after day. When an ordinary commuter vehicle gets hot, it is a minor inconvenience for the driver. When a highly tuned, hypersensitive supercar bakes relentlessly in the desert sun, it transforms into a massive financial liability. We are not looking at a story about weak automotive engineering. We are looking at a story about an operating environment that has become intensely hostile to the very concept of outdoor luxury. Why would a modern urban empire, capable of purchasing absolutely anything on Earth, find itself entirely unable to purchase a simple patch of shade for its most prized status symbols? Is the extreme environmental heat transforming the ultimate icon of speed into a glaring, heavy testament to air conditioning dependency? We need to look very closely at the official data, because a standard thermometer alone does not tell the full, suffocating story of this environment. The terrifying figure of 143 degrees Fahrenheit, or roughly 62 degrees Celsius, should never be misunderstood as the standard ambient air temperature on the bustling streets of Dubai. That specific figure represents the heat index. It is the perceived physical temperature created when extreme baseline heat violently collides with the oppressive, suffocating humidity blowing in from the Persian Gulf. But that critical distinction is exactly what makes the situation on the ground so precarious. Because a vehicle does not merely exist within the clean parameters of a television weather broadcast, it lives on the blistering, dark asphalt. It constantly absorbs intense sunlight through its sloping glass. It traps kinetic energy within a tightly sealed cabin. Its soft rubber tires rest directly on melting tarmac, and its exterior paint bakes under hours of direct, unfiltered solar radiation. The official air temperature might read significantly lower on your phone screen, but the actual operating environment for the heavy machinery, the expansive asphalt, the leather cabin, and the human driver is exponentially more severe than the news reports suggest. Are the official weather reports inadvertently masking the true, punishing cost of operating these highly sensitive machines in an environment they were never genuinely meant to inhabit on a permanent basis? The most unsettling aspect of this massive thermal crisis is not the dramatic Hollywood sight of a car suddenly bursting into flames on the highway. The truly terrifying part is that from the outside, the vehicle looks completely undisturbed and perfectly serene. The bespoke paint still gleams under the sun. The chrome emblem catches the light beautifully. The aggressive, aerodynamic silhouette remains absolutely flawless. But inside the vehicle, the reality is drastically different. The cabin is actively and violently functioning as a miniature thermal trap. Radiant sunlight penetrates the thick acoustic glass, and viciously heats the premium leather seats, the carbon fiber steering wheel, the massive digital touch displays, and the hidden industrial adhesives holding the luxury interior together. You do not need the physical dashboard to literally melt to face a catastrophic mechanical failure. The real, insidious enemy is the endless cycle. Day after day, the intricate interior is subjected to severe heat, then abruptly and violently cooled by maximum capacity air conditioning, and then inevitably abandoned to bake all over again. This relentless thermal cycling places immense invisible stress on premium materials, delicate internal electronics, and highly complex ambient sensors. For an exotic supercar, replacing a warped interior panel or a malfunctioning central touchscreen is not a quick fix. It is a massive logistical nightmare arriving with an astronomical invoice. If every single VIP parking spot effectively transforms the pristine cabin into an industrial oven, are these vehicles actually being driven, or are they simply participating in a grueling, highly expensive daily endurance test? An elite supercar does not succumb to the elements because of a single compromised component. It is systematically and ruthlessly attacked on multiple engineering fronts simultaneously. First, we must consider the intricate electronics. Modern luxury vehicles are effectively rolling supercomputers, packed with delicate microchips. Extreme, sustained heat aggressively accelerates battery degradation. The more advanced sensors, massive screens, and automated driving aids a car possesses, the more deeply vulnerable its nervous system becomes to extreme ambient temperatures. Second, the performance tires. High-performance rubber is brilliantly engineered to provide maximum grip and precise steering feedback at incredible speeds on a track. But when subjected to prolonged, stationary exposure on scorching concrete, the chemical bonds in the rubber degrade prematurely. This invisible, silent wear exponentially increases the risk of catastrophic blowouts or severe tread separation if maintenance is even slightly neglected. Third, the advanced cooling systems. A massive, high-displacement engine inherently generates a tremendous amount of internal thermal energy. In a climate that is already pushing physical boundaries, the heavy radiators, the high-speed cooling fans, and the vital internal fluids must work twice as hard just to maintain a baseline equilibrium. When the car is forced to idle in heavy urban traffic, the natural cooling airflow vanishes, and the thermal pressure spikes violently under the hood. Finally, the climate control. In Dubai, heavy air conditioning is never considered a luxury feature. It is a vital, non-negotiable life support system. The compressor must aggressively drag the interior cabin temperature down from a dangerous, suffocating peak to a level fit for human habitation. Every single time this happens, the massive engine bears an additional heavy load, consuming far more energy and suffering significantly more wear. A meticulously engineered machine might easily conquer wind resistance at 200 miles per hour. But can it truly defeat a city where every single component is simultaneously under constant siege by the atmosphere itself? Is the modern economic miracle of Dubai inadvertently cultivating a street environment where the most expensive machines on the planet are forced to operate in a permanent state of brutal survival mode? There is a profound, almost tragic irony hidden deeply within this urban crisis. A hyper-expensive supercar does not fail in extreme environmental conditions because it is cheaply made or poorly designed. It encounters catastrophic operational problems precisely because it is so highly specialized and meticulously crafted. Every single millimeter of its dramatic design is optimized for a singular purpose: to be lighter, to be faster, to be more aerodynamic, and to be deeply responsive to the driver. The suspension is agonizingly low to the ground. The tires are impossibly thin to save weight. The engine bay is tightly packed to optimize weight distribution. The interior is draped in rare, incredibly sensitive bespoke materials. But the unforgiving climate of the Middle East does not care about lap times or aerodynamic drag coefficients. The environment demands a completely different, brutal metric for survival. It asks a far more ruthless and primitive question. How many consecutive days can this absolute masterpiece withstand being roasted alive under a hostile sun before it breaks? A minor component failure on a standard economy car is a brief, manageable annoyance. A minor component failure on a limited production multi-million-dollar supercar triggers a cascading, highly stressful financial event. Specialized replacement parts must be flown in from overseas factories. Highly trained technicians must be secured at a premium. The vehicle immediately loses its utility and risks a drop in its coveted collectible value. Does the extreme, punishing heat of this environment ultimately weaponize the very advantages of a supercar, turning its lightweight materials, extreme performance tolerances, and intricate digital electronics into its most fatal and expensive flaws? In most parts of the developed world, a residential garage is simply a dark place to store a vehicle safely when it is not in active use. In the ultra-high net worth sectors of Dubai, the garage has evolved into something entirely different and profoundly more complex. It acts as a highly controlled, incredibly expensive medical facility for luxury assets. These elite, subterranean parking structures demand dedicated heavy climate control, constant industrial dehumidification, and meticulous environmental monitoring. They exist specifically to keep the vehicle battery from dying prematurely, to actively stop the performance tires from baking completely flat on the concrete floor, to forcefully prevent the premium interior adhesives from losing their structural integrity, to shield the flawless bespoke paint from relentless, degrading ultraviolet radiation. And this is the precise moment the narrative deeply shifts away from automotive engineering and mechanical limits. It transforms into a glaring, undeniable story about the hidden, rapidly soaring costs required merely to prevent an international symbol of wealth from depreciating into complete uselessness. Owning a pinnacle supercar in this specific climate requires an entire, energy-intensive ecosystem of artificial preservation. If a multi-million-dollar machine is only truly secure when it is locked securely inside a heavily chilled, meticulously monitored vault, is the wealthy resident genuinely purchasing a practical mode of transportation, or have they inadvertently invested in an incredibly demanding, high-maintenance artifact that refuses to exist in nature? The true, undeniable power of a supercar in a city like this is not its staggering top speed on an empty highway. Its true social power is its sheer visibility. It is mathematically designed to be seen by the masses. It must idle aggressively and loudly outside the most opulent, towering hotels. It must glide effortlessly down wide, immaculate central boulevards. It must catch the neon reflections of the famous city skyline and serve as the undeniable, glamorous background for millions of lucrative tourist photographs. But when the extreme, crushing summer climate forces these rolling symbols of status into hiding, the grand illusion of the city severely fractures. To survive the season, the wealthy owners must actively avoid peak daylight hours. They must completely shun outdoor VIP parking lots. They must heavily restrict any daytime cruising. The city remains absolutely dazzling and vibrant after sunset, but the blazing, silent daylight hours expose a glaring, uncomfortable vulnerability. The sunlit streets become empty, completely devoid of the very luxury symbols that define the global brand of the metropolis. The celebrated luxury is physically forced to retreat indoors, hiding behind tinted glass and concrete walls. If the ultimate, uncompromising display of wealth must constantly hide from the sun, desperately waiting out the heat in chilled, artificial basements, is the symbol still serving the grand image of the city? Or has the city been forced to construct its entire architectural infrastructure just to serve and protect the symbol? If true, unbridled luxury can only safely emerge after twilight, does the harsh daytime reality expose the absolute weakest link in this glittering modern economic model? The struggling, overheating supercar is an incredibly potent visual metaphor, but it is ultimately a small, isolated piece of a much larger, far more concerning puzzle. It is merely a localized symptom of a massive systemic challenge. The vulnerable vehicle perfectly mirrors the broader operational reality and the looming tourism crisis facing the city itself. This extraordinary metropolis built its entire global reputation on the absolute, uncompromising mastery of its surrounding environment. It confidently conquered the harsh desert. It radically reshaped the natural coastline with massive artificial islands. It erected unprecedented construction miracles of glass and steel that defied traditional engineering. It successfully engineered a permanent oasis of global luxury. But as extreme global weather patterns intensify, this bold strategy of total environmental control demands an ever-increasing, staggering financial ransom. A fragile luxury vehicle requires a private air-conditioned garage. A massive, towering glass skyscraper demands gargantuan, power-hungry cooling plants just to remain habitable. A sprawling, world-famous luxury mall must aggressively chill millions of cubic feet of air every single hour just to keep the vital tourist foot traffic alive and spending. International visitors must actively avoid the outdoors during the day, threatening the traditional tourism revenue models. The entire economic structure becomes fiercely, dangerously dependent on continuous artificial climate regulation. The city unequivocally possesses the financial capital to maintain this massive cooling system right now. That is not the debate. The true creeping concern is the unsustainable trajectory of the environmental maintenance bill. As the climate grows undeniably harsher and more unpredictable, the sheer energy cost to isolate this fragile, spectacular luxury bubble from the surrounding blazing atmosphere skyrockets. Is the modern city actually conquering the brutal desert, or is it merely paying an increasingly exorbitant, astronomical daily fee just to delay the desert from violently reclaiming its miraculous architecture? A single struggling supercar will obviously not cause the sudden collapse of a wealthy metropolis, but it serves as a crystal-clear, highly visible early warning system for a much deeper issue. It is the most tangible, easily understood visual evidence of a massive, invisible environmental crisis slowly unfolding. In a rapidly warming global climate, urban luxury does not simply evaporate overnight. It mutates. It adapts, but those adaptations come with a heavy price. It becomes significantly harder to maintain. It becomes vastly more expensive to operate. It violently retreats behind thick, insulated glass doors. It becomes entirely and hopelessly dependent on relentless mechanical cooling. The city once utilized these incredible, roaring machines to broadcast a powerful, undeniable message to the entire world. A bold message that here, in this specific place, there are absolutely no limits to what money and engineering can achieve. But when the absolute ultimate symbols of boundless human wealth are forced to systematically and quietly retreat from the midday sun, a far more chilling and sobering reality takes shape. We are currently witnessing the immense, terrifying hidden costs of sustaining a completely artificial paradise against the will of nature. The silent struggle of a parked supercar under the scorching sun forces us to look far beyond the glittering perfect facade and critically examine the incredibly fragile, energy-intensive foundation beneath it all. If the absolute pinnacle of human automotive engineering and limitless financial power must constantly and fearfully evade the natural climate, what catastrophic, unimaginable price will the rest of this spectacular city ultimately have to pay just to survive the coming decades? The architectural observations, economic theories, and environmental scenarios discussed in this documentary are based on current, observable global climate trends and the widely documented mechanical tolerances of modern high-performance vehicles. This narrative is intended to deeply explore the complex economic and environmental challenges of extreme heat on urban luxury infrastructure and global tourism models. Do you believe the disappearing supercar phenomenon is merely an isolated, temporary issue for the wealthy, or do you see it as the very first visible crack in the grand, ambitious economic design of this modern miracle? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments section below, and do not forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden realities of our modern world.